Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Bengal Tiger Podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me today is Talia Goodman from On3, the National Women's College Basketball writer. Talia, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Excited to talk some LSU after seeing them. So how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Like you said, you were able to see LSU and their comeback win over Kentucky over the weekend. A game of just completely two halves. I thought it was the worst first half of LSU, and they've had some bad ones. Like I
Yeah,
think this
I
was
was
the
gonna
third.
say, I don't know worst. I don't know. I think there's a few you could point to, but
Like, they have had some bad first half. I think this was the third 15-point comeback they've had this year, which is crazy. I don't know if you tweeted it or someone else tweeted it out, but, they completely flipped it, and it happened really quickly in the third quarter. The defense turned up, and then they were able to break down the Kentucky defense, who I thought had a great first half, and then LSU kind of just jumped on them there. What were your thoughts on LSU after seeing them in person and being there?
it was kind of exactly what I thought would happen just from watching them all year. Like I kind of knew this is not a great first half team, right? And
Mhm.
I've said that before and have posted the pictures of the scores, whatever. So there have been some bad ones, and I wasn't surprised when that happened this time. I was actually surprised by how good Kentucky looked, just because I've seen them be a little iffy. So I wasn't
Mhm.
sure if they'd be able to kind of handle LSU. But yeah, LSU not a good first half, wasn't surprised. Then I expected them to come out strong in the second half. I did because that's just what they do. Like they always do that. And so I think
Yeah.
it was the story that it's been pretty much all year. No big surprises for me. Was impressed with that third quarter, especially. I think they only allowed like 6 points in that quarter, so that was really good for them. And then able to close it out. So yeah, impressed with how they handled Georgia Amore.
Mhm.
Uh, Impressed with how they handled that road environment. Yeah, no, I mean LSU fans love to say that I hate LSU. I love watching LSU. I love watching LSU. They didn't want me at that game.
Yeah.
They told me to get out. They won. I'm
That's hilarious.
charm. I promise.
I didn't well, I figured it's kind of the nature of the beast, I guess, when you cover things nationally. It's like every fan base thinks you hate them. So
Yeah. I'm like,
I haven't been in that space, but for
but
you,
I had a lot of fun watching them on whenever I was there Sunday, whatever that was, and then I've had a lot of fun watching them all year, and I think it's really impressive what Kim Mulkey has been able to do with a different team. Right, it's much smaller than she's had to play, and I think she's adjusted to that really well. And they have, more than met expectations for what I expected of them.
yeah. My question was throughout the year was defensively
Yeah.
and going against Kentucky, who is one of the most efficient offenses in the SEC and in the country, was how they would match up there. I thought Dave Wilson did a great job on Amore, like you said, and then handling their bigs, even though they're not like dominant post bigs, you still Strack and so on, you still have to handle. I thought they, like you said, especially the second half, that was a like clinical defensive effort that I wasn't sure early in the year if LSU could reach that point because no Angel Reese and
Yeah.
not great bigs on the inside in terms of like defensively, but Samaya's been great the past couple games, and like defensively, I think that's what will determine their ceiling in the postseason.
Well, it was a weird game too because Kentucky is usually not taking 36 three-pointers in a game.
Mhm.
That's not typical of them, and LSU was able to hold them to, I think it was only 6 of 36, which is
Yeah.
kind of crazy there for I mean, they're a really talented three-point shooting team too, and it's not like, um, they were just missing wide open shots. Like, it was LSU's defensive effort that I was really impressed with too.
Yeah. Got to see Michaela Williams have
Mm.
Michaela Williams game, and she's really come on to the point where I saw someone tweet about her potentially being the SEC Player of the Year, and I had to stop and think for a second because in my mind it's always been like, all right, Flage or Anissa will be in contention for that, and so on. But now it's like Michaela's up to like 17 points in conference play. She's been ultra efficient. And anybody who's watched LSU really the past month has seen her take another step forward. What are your thoughts on Michaela, especially seeing her against Kentucky?
I was really impressed with her in that game, 100%. Don't know about that take of her for SEC Player of the Year. I just think there are other players who I would say at this particular moment deserve it more. But I was super impressed with her and love how Mulkey kind of advocates for her after the games too. I think that was really important to someone asked about her and she said, everyone only talks about Flage and Anissa, which is true. Like most people are just talking about those two, but it really is the three of them that are like this core group that are bringing them to their success. And I think I put this somewhere the other day, but it's like what everyone talked about with LSU, including me, was like what LSU brought in through the portal, right? Like that was kind of the big talk of the offseason when it's really like that didn't while they're impactful, that's
Yeah.
not what really mattered in the grand scheme of this team. And so I think talking about Michaela is something that everyone should do a lot more often.
Yeah. Well, I gotta ask you then, who's the SEC Player of the Year if you had a ballot right now?
Uh
Is
I'm
it Booker?
I'm probably going Booker or Harmon. I'm going one of them probably at this moment.
Just
I'm just Texas is my number one team in the country at the moment. I've been more impressed with them. Um, but Anissa is in there for me too. Like she is. I would go Anissa of the 3 LSU players. That's who
yeah.
I would go.
Yeah, I was gonna say Flage's the production has kind of dipped a little bit for her. It's been a little streakier. The 3-point percentage I think has dipped just off the top of my head. Anissa's field goal percentage has dipped. So that's where it's like those two have kind of taken a little step back while Michaela's been able to surge forward. So it'll be interesting to see. But it is an interesting race because I've seen like Joyce Edwards thrown out there. It's hard with South Carolina. Just
It is. I can't reasonably make a case for any South Carolina player because of the way that Don Staley plays
yeah,
their team. And that's not to say any of those players are not stars, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
like none of them are going to be SEC player of the year in my opinion.
No, no. So that's where it falls to. Like I'm cool with the default being best player on the best team here because
Yeah.
Booker has been very good. And I said like 2 weeks ago on the Dave Campbell's podcast, I was like, "Are we sure Texas isn't the best team in the country?" And then they had the stretch of wins, so it makes me look smart. 2 weeks ago, being like Texas is really good, even if they play this style of ball where it's like they can shoot 25% and still win the game
Yeah.
because that's just what they do. But I think it's an interesting discussion, like what the first team will look like and so on.
Yeah.
Kind of a little bit more big picture. I know LSU, like if we're in terms of rankings, in terms of bracketology, seeding, and everything like that, is not a 1 seed. It's not a top 4 seed right now, but it's like firmly as a 2 seed. And
Yep.
I think no matter what, they'll kind of end up there, barring like a crazy like 3 straight losses or something.
Yep.
Uh, but how do you view like their ceiling in the tournament, like their potential, like how far you think they could go if things go right? Because this is a year where there's not a 38-0 South Carolina team and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, I put something out the other day of like my 7 teams that I think should be considered contenders to win the whole thing. There's kind of 2 tiers of that when you're thinking about it as well. And I think I put something out about that yesterday. It's like I honestly would have this is so weird. Like I would have LSU and South Carolina in the same tier, and it's not the first tier. Like both of
Yeah.
them are in that kind of second tier, which is like crazy to think about at this moment right now. But yeah, like I think I would not be surprised if they went and won a title. I wouldn't be like, "Oh my god, the biggest shock of my life, LSU," you know what I
It
mean?
was
Like, it's
more of a shock 2 years ago when they
right,
won it.
exactly. No, I'd be like, "Yeah, that makes sense." Like, if someone told me at the beginning of this year that LSU won, I'd be like, "All right, yeah, I'm cool." Like, that makes sense to me, but it's not like they're not my favorite. They're not my betting favorite to win. They're not even probably my top 3 betting favorites to win
Yeah.
right now. But, Final 4 is kind of, like, reasonably where I'm like, "Yes, I can see them making the Final 4."
Yeah. That's where especially it'll depend on the draw. If they are a 2 seed, as we expect them to be, they're not going to get Texas and they won't get South Carolina's already bumped down to a 2 seed, or it
Yeah,
depends, I guess, who wins the turn. I don't know exactly. One of the SEC teams will be a 1 seed. It'll probably be Texas.
yeah,
So they won't get Texas in their draw. So then it's UCLA, Notre Dame, UConn, probably, or USC. One of these other ones. If you had to draw up a path for LSU to make the Final Four, which of those other 1 seeds would you most want them to play? If that
USC.
makes sense. US.
USC. I love watching USC and still think USC has the best, potential of any of these teams. And I said that at the beginning of the year. But there are a lot more faults to be found with them, I think. And so I think if you're able to exploit that, you can catch them on a night where it's literally just Juju doing everything. And if you are able to stop her, like that's how you win the game.
Yeah.
They also like when you think about it, like Notre Dame hasn't won a bad game or lost a bad game since November, right? UConn hasn't lost a bad game all year, really. Um, UCLA has not lost a bad game. USC lost a bad game at Iowa. I was like, that was a bad game. Iowa's not a team that is in contention to go, in my opinion, further than maybe a Sweet 16, and that's like a high ceiling for them. That was a bad game that they lost, and so I think it showed that they are more beatable than any of those other teams kind of at the top tier right now.
If you had to pick between like Notre Dame and UConn for LSU, I guess specifically, because it's going to be all about who they face as a 1 seed. And I know they have to get 3 games to get there, but like if they matched up, do you think Notre Dame or UConn would be a tougher matchup for LSU?
It's tough. I think Notre Dame is the toughest matchup in the country for anyone right now, I think. And I know they just lost, and I know I didn't even have them at number 1 this week, but I still think they're the toughest matchup because of what they're able to do on both sides of the court, right? Like they have everything. They have the star power, they have the ability to shoot, they're defensively really talented. They can I think they have very good coaching as well. Neil Ivey has done a wonderful job. So I just think they kind of have the most of anyone. And I think UCLA is in kind of a similar boat, but are losing it a little bit where there weren't many kind of weaknesses to point out. I think that's what Notre Dame is right now. Even though I know they just lost, but it was a double overtime game on the road and it was their 3rd game of the week. So I'm not really faulting them too much for that.
Is Betts back for UCLA yet? I know she missed some
Yes.
time. She's
He
back.
was back for their last game. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a close one for them. But it's just such an interesting year. It's like you're not, like I said, you're not like just looking at South Carolina or a UConn team or something here where it's like, oh gosh, they're gonna be like minus 150 to win the championship going into it.
I think even like a TCU or a Tennessee could like sneak up and make a Final Four. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of these teams will drop fairly early, and I don't know who it will be. Like it could be LSU. Like I'm not averse to the fact that LSU has played with fire throughout this entire year.
Well,
I
if they
mean,
dig too far of a hole in that first half, you're kind of screwed, right? Like,
heck, Stanford went to overtime. You know, Michaela Williams again had to go play superhero for a bit. Washington, Kalen Gilbert made a shot to beat him. Like I'm open to the fact that LSU of all of these top 7 teams that I agree with, like there's a clear like tier 1, tier 2, like these 7 teams, LSU might have the lowest floor of them, but I
yeah.
also think from a raw talent perspective, like top 3 players, Flau'jae could go and score 25. Like Michaela, Anissa, like those 3 players can carry you at times, but it's just such a wide range. Like it could be Sweet 16, it could be national championship.
It's funny that you say that because I think that's true. I think LSU and USC have the highest ceiling and the lowest floor, to be so honest with you. Like, I think they both could go either way. They're both kind of confusing teams who have some confusing results against teams that are not remotely contenders, you know what I mean? But have also earned some really impressive wins and can just like go off on anyone. So I think it's those 2 teams. Like, I think one of them I'm going to give you a hot take. One of them is going to make the national championship game and one of them is going to lose in the second round of the tournament.
There you go. Let's hope it's not LSU for this LSU podcast. We will say LSU is going to the national championship game. But no, I definitely think anybody who's all LSU fans, I mean, I run a message board while games are going on, and it's like, man, this is another slow starter. You know, it's another stretch where the offense just kind of hits a rut there, and they are very reliant on playing in transition. And that's what gives me hope is that the defense every single year under Mulkey and Bob Starkey like gets way better in February and March. And that's what like the tournament, the championship run, they just went crazy defensively and were able to like just shut down team after team after team and kind of will themselves to a championship. Last year it was similar, but it was like ultimately they weren't deep enough and it was a weird, group. And now this year, if they can reach that defensive ceiling, which I wasn't sure if they could because they don't have Angel Reese,
Right.
then they would still have a shot here. They still have a shot to make a run. And honestly, a Final Four would be a tremendous season for LSU still.
Yes, it would. And I think like with them, I judge them on their bad first halves, right? Like I do. I think everyone judges them on their bad first halves, but I think it's a lot better and more valuable to be a really good second half team and to be able to come through in crunch time. And they're like the one team that I point to with that. Like them, maybe NC State is kind of similar in that way where it's like you put them in a late game situation with it all on the line, like someone's going to come through and they're going to end up winning that game.
Yeah, and they have Michaela Williams who has not even just as like a bucket getter, but like as a decision maker, you can just like post her up or get put in the mid post and be like, all right, if they help, she's gonna make the right pass, like she's gonna take the right shot. So what she's done as a sophomore, like early in the year, it was like, okay, I'm not sure if she's quite ready for this role. now she is like legitimately ready for this role. So I'm excited to see her in a tournament setting. Before I let you go, I was going to ask just about this SEC in general, because I've been at LSU. This is my 4th year at LSU. The first 3 years at LSU, obviously that was when Mulkey took over, is when I got here. The SEC was just very top heavy. It was just South Carolina, LSU, and then it was a bunch of other teams that were like fringe top 25. Now, because of Texas and Oklahoma in there as well, but also Kentucky, Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, this is like the best conference in the country, right?
100%.
Okay.
100%. Yes. It's like anyone who tries to fight me, like, I love the Big Ten. I am in Big Ten country right now. I'm 100 feet away from Assembly Hall. I love it. But the SEC is just so much better. It is. It's not only better teams, but more entertaining basketball, like more like pure, like what I want to be watching is SEC basketball, no matter what two teams are playing. Like I'm watching Missouri now because Missouri's given some teams trouble and they're like the worst team in the conference. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I mean, even Vanderbilt, right? Throwing out Blake's with 50-point games here at 6 and 8. Tennessee, who this year in particular, like talking about another team with a high ceiling, low floor, like the way they play, just running up and down the court. It's very interesting. Like you have a bunch of different styles. You still have Coach Yo. You still have now Kenny Brooks here. The contrast in styles is fascinating to me in this conference.
That's why I think I've been to Kentucky. I go where I can drive, right? And I think I've been to Kentucky more than I've been to any school in the country. And like I said, I'm 100 feet away from Assembly Hall. So I have been to Kentucky, I think like 6 times this year. And I'm going again on Thursday just because there's just something so much fun about SEC basketball. And like, I want to see as many SEC teams as I can. It doesn't even matter who they are because they're all like, most of them are top 25 teams, to be so honest. Like, yeah. They have been in and out of the top 25 at some point this year, probably like at least 10, right? Like it's nuts.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I'm going to ask you a non-SEC question. I'll ask about the Big 12 real quick because I just did a Dave Campbell's podcast and Baylor just beat the brakes off of Kansas State. Baylor TCU play on Sunday for the title. I guess we could tie it in here to LSU. Haley Van Lith is playing on TCU now. Who do you think wins the game? It's in Foster Pavilion in Waco.
I'm sorry, TCU. I know Baylor just won, and I have them in the top 25 for like the first time in months, right? And so I like what Baylor has been doing, but they beat Kansas State without Ayoka Lee. I'm sorry, like why is no one?
Kansas State has beaten people without Ayoka Lee. They've been without Ayoka Lee a lot of the year.
No, they 100% have, which is why I've been saying all year that I think the Big 12 is kind of
weak
this year. I don't. Like Iowa State is my biggest disappointment of the year. I thought they were going to be a top 10 team, and they're not a tournament team in my mind at this moment. They'll maybe get there in a couple games, but we'll see. Like I like Baylor and have been impressed with what they've done without, they're still without their best player too, like Little Pitch Bugs. Like I think it's impressive what they're doing. But TCU and I'll put Kansas State in that tier too. Like those are the two teams that you're kind of like scared of right now. And TCU is really the only one like. No, the craziest part is no AP voter really had them ranked at the beginning of the year. Like preseason, no one had TCU
it was crazy.
in the conversation. I think I had them at like 17 to start the year.
I was gonna say they were top 20. Like I didn't do a poll, but like on the Dave Campbell's podcast, I was like, this feels like I think I talked to you about this before the year. We talked about this on that podcast.
Yeah, no, and so I've been high on TCU, but I'm higher on them now than obviously I was at the beginning of the year. They've done a great job, and they have a lot of the pieces that I think people didn't know. Like I think people knew they had the talent, but didn't know how it would come together, which is a totally fair kind of like assumption to make, I guess. But it has come together and it's worked out really well. And this is a team full of players with a chip on their shoulder that really want to win. And so I'm going to bet TCU every time in the Big 12. Like that's going to be kind of my go-to no matter what team they're playing against in conference. I'm going to bet TCU.
I like it. I just had that was just a basketball question. LSU fans are like, what are we talking about here?
No, Haley Van Lith, by the way.
Haley Van Lith, yeah. She's
great, guys. She's been great.
She's very good still. But I thank you for coming on. It's always a lot of fun. LSU fans will enjoy this. And women's basketball, we're almost in the tournament. 2 games left. LSU plays at Alabama and then hosts Ole Miss the last 2 games of the year. So 2 more ranked teams for LSU to end the season. But yeah, thank you for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
For sure.